The corridors of the Allery High Command Station were as silent as the void outside, lit with a sterile blue hue that reflected the cold order of its inhabitants. Ambassador Kalen Nar moved with the practiced grace of someone born into the bureaucratic elite of the Zalari species. Tall, hairless, eyes like polished obsidian. His robe fluttered slightly with each step, an outward symbol of status, authority, and control. Nothing in his life had ever occurred outside of plan, protocol, or precedent. That ended when the translucent data panel in his hands flickered, pulse read, and displayed a single line of text. Congratulations, you're being reassigned to the humans. At first, he assumed it was an error, a joke, perhaps, if his species believed in such things. The humans certainly did, but Zalari communications systems were incapable of malfunction. Protocols prohibited humor in official notices. The message remained as it was, stark, unfeeling, irreversible. His breath slowed. His second heart skipped a beat, something he hadn't experienced since adolescence. He reread the message 6 more times. When the realization settled in that it was real, it did not come with panic or despair. It came with something far worse. Disorder. The humans were an anomaly in the Galactic Union. Their induction, still contested by several major powers, had come on the heels of one of the fastest technological accelerations in recorded interstellar history. They'd gone from splitting atoms to punching holes in subspace in less than 2 of their centuries. But it wasn't their machines that troubled the Zalari. It was their behavior. Humans were loud. Humans were emotional. Humans were violent, yet oddly diplomatic. They bonded with predators. They argued for sport. They made decisions under duress. They treated pain as a teacher and chaos as a playground. They were dangerous. Kalanar had petitioned twice, formally, to restrict human expansion into neutral systems. Both efforts had failed, each time ending with a flurry of counterarguments delivered by human diplomats who smiled while slicing apart centuries of diplomatic precedents with metaphors and jokes. He still remembered the last one. You can't expect us to play chess when we've invented laser tag. Whatever that meant. Now, he was to serve as envoy to a human vessel, not a diplomatic station. A ship, military class. He would be embedded with them for 6 cycles, to better integrate cross-species understanding and communication. He prepared his affairs. He deleted his personal logs. He declined 3 farewell receptions. Then he reported to Docking Bay 14, where a small, toothy human waited with a sign that read, "Welcome, Cal. Hope you like karaoke." Her uniform was unzipped slightly at the collar, and her boots were unlaced. Regulation infractions stacked up in Kalanar's mind like error codes. She beamed. "You must be the ambassador. I'm Captain Rena Ortega. Call me Rena. Or Cap, or Big Red, if you're feeling cheeky." "I will call you Captain Ortega," Kalanar replied, his tone glacial. "Oof. Formal. You'll thaw eventually." She winked. One eye just closed and reopened. She turned and waved him toward the shuttle, with a kind of saunter that made him uncertain whether she was leading him to a meeting or a prank. A few other humans were loading what looked like audio equipment, and was that a crate labeled Tactical Margaritas? The shuttle itself was battered, painted with symbols and phrases Kalanar didn't recognize. One said "no step." Another, "fire me first." He decided not to ask. During the short ride, she offered him a wrapped object, a granola bar, "keeps you sharp." He declined. She shrugged, unwrapped it with her teeth, and devoured it in 2 bites. The human ship loomed ahead, a blunt-nosed carrier painted matte gray with flashes of color near the engine vents. Its designation blinked on his panel. UHS Audacity. An appropriate name, he thought bitterly. Once aboard, he was marched through what he would later learn was a fire drill. Except no one seemed particularly alarmed. Smoke filled the hallways in control bursts, and people were laughing. During an emergency simulation. "You'll get used to the drills," Rena said, smirking. "Half of them are real anyway." Kalanar considered asking for clarification, but suspected it would only deepen his anxiety. The ambassador's quarters were surprisingly Spartan. 1 bunk, 1 desk, a bookshelf filled with novels, actual printed paper. He recognized one title, The Art of War. Beneath it, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. An odd pairing. Rena stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You'll have a chance to meet the crew tomorrow. We're headed to a contested system. Nothing hot, just a show of presence. You'll be safe. Mostly. I was not informed I would be deployed to an active region. She smiled. They never do tell you the good parts. Rest up. You've got a wild ride ahead of you. She left before he could respond. That night, Kalendar attempted to sleep. He composed a report to High Command, which he revised 12 times before realizing he had no useful data to report. Just impressions, emotions, nebulous and unquantifiable. Useless. At precisely 0600, the overhead lights pulsed. Music blared from the intercom, something with a screaming voice and what sounded like electric guitars being tortured. The door to his quarters hissed open. "Rise and shine, Cal," came Rena's voice. "Today you meet the freaks." They assembled in the mess hall, which doubled as a lounge and tripled as an argument arena, judging by the sound levels. He was introduced to the pilot, Knox, a cybernetically augmented woman with a permanent grin and a fondness for bets. The engineer, Gilly, who spoke in equations and jokes in equal measure, and the ship's AI, which went by Moose and had a deep baritone voice that narrated mundane events like a documentary. Within 20 minutes, someone asked him what his favorite curse word was. "I do not use such language," he replied flatly. "You will," Knox said, grinning. "After lunch. An event involving spicy noodles, arm wrestling, and an impromptu talent show. The captain summoned Kalendar to the bridge. Just so you know," she said, feet kicked up on the console, "we're about to buzz a warlord's listening post. Harmless. Mostly. Just keep your hands inside the ride. Is this sanctioned?" "Sanctioned? Cal, we're humans. We invented plausible deniability." The ship tilted. Stars twisted. Kalendar felt his stomach, or whatever the Zolari equivalent was, lurch. The crew cheered. For a brief moment, he caught his reflection in the screen. He looked alien, truly alien, not because of his skin or his eyes, but because he was surrounded by creatures who defied everything he thought defined civilization. And they were winning. That night, in his report, he wrote a single line. Observation. Humanity is not compatible with order, but they are undeniably effective. He stared at the words for several minutes before adding, "Further study required." The first 48 hours aboard the Audacity tested every fiber of Kalendar's mental discipline. He documented discrepancies like a lifeline, missing inspection records, a baffling lack of hierarchy enforcement, and crew members who called each other by nicknames like Hot Sauce and Boomer. No one saluted. Orders were given like suggestions, yet carried out with near miraculous efficiency. It defied every model of command efficiency he'd ever studied. The humans, in turn, treated him like a curiosity, not with malice, but with an almost casual fascination. They asked if he slept upside down, whether he had emotions, what music he liked, and if Zolari could taste cinnamon. Gilly tried to feed him some. It burned. Worse still, they didn't seem to understand his horror. To them, he was simply new, a mystery to explore, not an ambassador to revere. The morning of their mission briefing began, like most things on the Audacity, with noise. The sound system came to life blaring a song whose sole lyrics appear to be "Danger Zone," repeated with increasing aggression. Kalendar dressed quickly, blinking away a headache. The briefing room was circular, a relic of some human philosophical preference for democratic visibility, despite its inefficiency in larger groups. Rena leaned against a hollow projector, sipping something black and steaming from a chip mug labeled Commander of Caffeine. "All right, kids and aliens," she said, grinning. "We got a squawk from a mining convoy in the Delker Expanse. Said they picked up a shadow tail, possibly pirate class, might be the Crimson Veil. Our job, find out, flex a little, and get out clean." She looked directly at Kalendar. "Ambassador, you're tagging along. Diplomatic eyes on our methods. Is that intended to reassure or threaten me?" he asked coolly. "Depends how closely you're watching." Moose, the ship's AI, chimed in with his deep, dulcet tone. Pirate vessel's last known vector puts them within 20 clicks of Delta Beta's dust ring. Visual distortion probability, 91%. Tactical advantage, minimal for us, optimal for ambush. Shall I prepare an obituary template? Moose is joking, Rena said, although Kalandar noticed she didn't count the data. Mostly, Moose added. They launched within the hour. In transit, Kalandar stood on a bridge, arms folded behind his back, trying not to reveal discomfort. The ship trembled faintly as it dropped out of FTL, a mechanical groan reverberating through the deck. Ahead, the vast orange dust rings of Delta Beta glowed with particulate static. There, said Knox, eyes darting over the interface. Spectral bleed. Something's hiding behind the ice cluster. Time to say hi, Rena said, already tapping into comms. Unknown vessel. This is UHS Audacity, acting under Galactic Union Patrol Authority. Power down and identify yourself. Silence. Kalandar stepped closer. Protocol dictates a secondary hail followed by a scan and a waiting period. The dust exploded. A sleek vessel darted from the debris, hull coated in reflective plating, twin ion cannons glowing crimson. It fired without warning. The bridge rocked, lights flickering. Warning klaxons howled. Shields down to 78%. Gilly shouted from the engineering console. They're using old Earth Tech disruptors. Bastards bought from scrapyards. Return fire, short bursts, Rena snapped. Target engines. No kills. Kalandar clung to the nearest console, stunned. You are under direct fire. Why not deploy lethal force? Rena didn't look at him. Because pirates are idiots, not monsters. Give them a chance to run. Missiles spiral from the Audacity in tight arcs, slamming into the pirate ship's thrusters. It veered wildly, venting plasma. They're hailing, Moose said. Put them on. A scraggly human face appeared, sweating, bruised. We surrender. Shields offline. We're pulling back. Then get gone, Rena said. Next time you try this stunt, I'm not feeling so merciful. The pirate ship limped away, disappearing into the dust. The bridge quieted. Kalandar stared at her. That was recklessly lenient. They could have destroyed us. They could have tried, she replied. But humans don't fight to destroy. We fight to win. And sometimes, winning means letting the enemy leave with their pride and a lesson. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There were no lines in his diplomatic training for this. Later, in the mess hall, the mood had shifted to casual celebration. Someone had hung up a hand-drawn sign that read one skirmish, 0 casualties, 100% badassery. Music played from wall speakers, and several crew members reenacted the encounter using utensils as ships. Kalandar sat at the edge of the room, trying to parse what he had just witnessed. The humans were not military, not in the traditional sense. They followed no rigid doctrine. Their strength came from unpredictability, from chaotic adaptability that allowed them to pivot without warning. Gilly approached, holding 2 glasses of something green and carbonated. For the nerves, he said, offering one. Kalandar took it. Does this contain ethanol? A little. That's the point. He didn't drink, but he didn't refuse. Gilly leaned beside him. You expected order, symmetry, all those clean lines and perfect decisions. That's not us. I expected professionalism. You got it, Gilly said, swirling his drink. It just doesn't wear a tie. Kalandar studied the room again. He saw it now. Not just chaos, but community. Not dysfunction, but flexibility. These humans had fought, joked, eaten, and celebrated as one. Their unity wasn't protocol. It was personal. Captain Ortega approached then, a mock scowl on her face. You look like someone who just figured out we're not the monsters they warned you about. I have not reached that conclusion. Good. Keep questioning. But also, keep watching. You might like what you see. He did not respond, but something in him shifted. A fraction. That night, he updated his report. Subject displays enhanced threat management through non-lethal dominance. Crew exhibits high-risk, high-efficiency behavioral patterns. Emotional bonding appears to increase operational cohesion. He paused. Preliminary conclusion. Human unpredictability is not a flaw. It is a strategic asset. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he read the printed books on his shelf, starting with The Art of War. As he turned the pages, a particular line stood out. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. He read it twice. Then he closed the book, stood, and walked to the viewport. The stars remained. Indifferent, patient, endless. Behind him, the humans played music into the dark. 3 days after the Delker skirmish, the Audacity received new orders. The transmission was routed through 6 encrypted relays and delivered with an unusually high clearance code. Level 6 Crimson, 1 tier below wartime mobilization. Rena Ortega's expression shifted from curious to grim as she read the classified brief on the bridge. When she was finished, she looked up at her crew with an odd tightness in her jaw. Moose, seal the bridge. Gilly, Knox, you stay. Ambassador, might as well sit in. This concerns you, too. The doors hissed, shut behind them. Rena projected a holographic image of a planet, arid, scarred, orbiting a red dwarf star. Kalendar recognized it immediately. Jade Echo, he said, tone stiff. Neutral system. Non-aligned species. Why are we being deployed there? Because it won't be neutral much longer, Rena replied. Our long-range probes picked up an incursion fleet, multiple ships belonging to the Koresh Dominion. Kalendar blinked. The Dominion? They signed the accord. Military expansion is expressly forbidden in the inner reach. Apparently, they found a loophole. They've labeled Jade Echo a cultural reclamation zone. Fabricated history, he muttered. Typical Koresh rhetoric. The locals won't survive if the Dominion takes root. They're not equipped. Our orders are to advise and evacuate key populations. Quietly. No fire, no headlines. Union wants to avoid sparking open war. Knox scoffed. So, we're ghosting a rescue under the noses of warlords. Rena nodded. Exactly. Kalendar folded his arms. I should contact the Union Council. Intervening without formal sanction is a breach of... No, Rena interrupted. What you should do is watch. Carefully. The ship dropped out of FDL 20 hours later. Jade Echo hung in space like a half-burnt coin, its surface lashed by dust storms and ancient tectonic scars. Scattered cities clung to plateaus and crater rims, dense clusters of biohabs and wind collectors. The Audacity approached under a masking veil of passive emissions. The crew split into strike teams, each one tasked with locating and securing non-combatants. Kalendar was assigned to Rena's team, much to his dismay. You're going to see what diplomacy looks like with a ticking clock, she said, checking her gear. No scripts, no committees, just lives on the line. They descended in a drop shuttle, kicking up a storm of red dust as they touched down outside a village surrounded by kinetic fencing and broken solar panels. The place looked abandoned, but sensors showed over 200 life forms underground. A local elder emerged first, tall, four-armed, skin like cracked stone. He regarded Rena and her team with suspicion, then surprise as she holstered her weapon and bowed slightly. We're here to help, she said. Evac starts in 15 minutes. The elder blinked. And if we refuse? You die, Rena said simply. The Koresh fleet will bomb this site to make room for their colonizers. No warning. No survivors. The elder hesitated. Why would humans care? Because we remember what it's like to be stepped on, she answered. Kalendar watched this exchange in stunned silence. There was no threat in her tone, yet no doubt either. The elder studied her for a long moment before nodding. Within minutes, the villagers emerged, children, workers, elders. They moved quickly once convinced, helping load supplies onto the shuttle. The sense of urgency became contagious. Then Moose's voice crackled through the comms. Unidentified vessel approaching fast. No transponder. Vector suggests an atmospheric intercept. Pirate, Knox asked. Worse, Rena replied. Koresh scout ship. They're testing our response. The elder turned sharply. You said we had time. We're out of it, Rena muttered. Everyone aboard. Now! The shuttle lifted off just as the first shockwave hit the ridge behind them, a warning blast from an orbital cannon. Kalendar felt the heat even through the hull. Inside the shuttle, chaos reigned. Children crying, adults shouting, the pilot weaving through a canyon at impossible speed. This is not diplomacy, Kalendar hissed, gripping his seat. No, Rena said. It's survival. They docked with the Audacity seconds before the caress ship could lock weapons. Moose activated the decoy protocols, sending a false signature skimming across the upper atmosphere. The ruse worked, just long enough for the ship to jump. Back in orbit, the crew worked tirelessly to debrief, refuel, and coordinate relocation efforts. The evacuees were being transferred to a Union-aligned refuge vessel already en route. Kalendar cornered Rena in the corridor outside the war room. You violated multiple interstellar protocols, he snapped. And saved 200 lives, she replied, not slowing. Your methods are dangerous. They're effective. That's why they reassigned you, Cal. Because the Council's rules don't work out here. You want order? Build a statue. We build chances. He stared at her, momentarily at a loss. You risked your crew, yourself. She turned jaw set. You think diplomacy is words and ink, but it's not. It's action. It's sacrifice. Sometimes it's fire and blood, and someone has to walk through it holding the damn banner. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Something inside him was fraying, not breaking, but unraveling just enough to make space for doubt. In the quiet that followed, Kalendar walked the ship's corridors alone. He passed children wrapped in thermal blankets, speaking in hushed tones. He passed engineers sleeping at their posts. He passed crew members joking quietly, even as they worked around clock. They weren't perfect, but they were committed. That night, his report changed. Observation. Humanity does not distinguish between diplomacy and action. For them, both are woven into instinct. This is not ignorance of law, but prioritization of values over protocol. He paused and added, I am beginning to understand them. I am beginning to see why they are feared and why they must be understood. Outside his window, Jade Echo turned slowly beneath the stars. One more battle avoided. One more war deferred. For now, the storm came without warning. Solar interference, Moose said, but even he sounded unsure. One moment, the Audacity drifted above the blue-gold atmosphere of Eris V, preparing for a diplomatic escort mission. The next, every sensor flared red, and the stars outside the viewing deck vanished in a bloom of static and electromagnetic chaos. Full systems blackout. Gilly barked from engineering. Comms, shields, FDL, all fried. Moose is on backup, but even he's running blind. Kalendar felt the shift in gravity as the ship listed slightly. Emergency inertia controls kicked in, just enough to prevent a full spiral. But they were adrift, vulnerable. Rena Ortega was already issuing commands, her voice cool steel. Manual diagnostics. Prioritize NAV and propulsion. Knox, keep scanning. Gilly, give me anything you've got left for shields. We're sitting in someone's crosshairs, and I don't like it. Kalendar stood at the edge of the bridge, the only one not moving. Yet inside, his thoughts raced. This wasn't random. Not natural. The timing was too precise, the blackout too surgical. And then, as if summoned by the weight of that realization, the enemy arrived. A ship? No. Construct. Emerged from the storm, its hull smooth and faceless, as though sculpted from void. No known species flew vessels like this. It had no windows, no visible engines, no comms. Just silent intent and mass. Knox leaned in. I don't like this. That thing isn't broadcasting anything, not even past the scans. Then Moose, barely audible, whispered, It's not a ship. It's a collector. The word landed like lead. Kalendar knew the name from legends, obscure archives the Union rarely cited aloud. Rumors from the edge. Artificial entities that harvested not territory or tech, but information and lives. Species that encountered them either joined or disappeared. The construct drifted closer, slowly, like it had all the time in the galaxy. Options? Rena asked. None good, Moose replied. No jump drive. No defenses. Best we can do is run and pray. No, Kalendar said, surprising even himself. You don't run from something like this. You make it curious. You make it hesitate. All eyes turned to him. I've studied encounter logs, patterns of behavior. These things don't kill indiscriminately. They study, observe. If they find something anomalous, they delay full engagement. And what do we show them? Rena asked, brow raised. A ship full of improvisers and half-broken protocols. Kalendar straightened. We show them us. In minutes, the crew transformed the bridge into a theater of chaos and brilliance. They activated every physical system still functioning. Manual lights, analog navigation, raw sound recordings of human speech and music. Gilly even rigged a signal pulse using an ancient Morse code, looping phrases like "We are alive," "We are many," "We are learning." Kalendar transmitted a stream of multilingual data, a torrent of languages, philosophies, art, biology, strategy. He included Zalari neural patterns, human emotional spectrums, random, complex, beautiful. The construct stopped its approach. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then, a signal. Not vocal, not even auditory. It was sensation. Data injected directly into the Audacity systems. Images, concepts, a torrent of comprehension. The bridge crew gasped as Moose translated in real time. It's asking, Moose said. Asking what? Rena whispered. Why do you persist? Kalendar didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, staring into the faceless void of the enemy vessel. Because uncertainty is our nature. Because hope is illogical, and we pursue it anyway. Because no matter how often we are outmatched, we refuse to accept stillness. That is why we persist. Silence answered him, but not emptiness. The construct began to pull away, rotating on an axis that defied physical propulsion. As it vanished back into the storm, the Audacity systems flared back to life. One by one, lights returned. Shields engaged. Moose let out a theatrical sigh. Reboot complete. And by some miracle, we're still here. The bridge didn't cheer. Not right away. They stood, quiet, absorbing the weight of what had happened. Then Gilly chuckled softly. We made an unknowable force blink. That's got to be worth a drink. Hours later, the mess hall was full again. Not loud, not jovial, but close, familiar. Kalendar stood at the viewport, watching the quiet of space settle once more. Rena joined him, 2 cups in hand. She offered one wordlessly. He accepted. So, she said after a beat, still think this crew's a diplomatic nightmare? He smiled, the gesture small but real. I think they're a paradox. High praise coming from you. I used to believe diplomacy was order. Now I wonder if it is the art of existing in disorder. Rena tilted her head. You've changed. No, he said. I've adapted. She clinked her mug against his. When he returned to his quarters, he opened his final report. It had grown bloated over the last week, filled with technical specs, emotional readings, and long-winded analysis. He deleted all of it. Instead, he typed a single line. Congratulations. You're being reassigned to the humans. They are not what we expected. They are more. He paused. And if we are wise, we will listen. Outside his window, the stars burn on,